The goal that everybody should be hoping for is for the United States and Russia to get the hell out of Syria and to get it the hell out, and by extension, the hell out of the region, right? And allow everybody who's been torn up and set it against each other by typical British perfidy, going all the way back to Sykes-Picot in 1916, that the best way for that to resolve itself is for all the players who are there, whose ancestral lands these are, to have to deal with each other without having the big bodyguard standing behind them. And I think that that's the possibility. There's a distinct possibility of that occurring in 2025 if Trump is allowed to take power.
On December 8, 2024, armed rebel forces captured the Syrian capital of Damascus, forcing President Bashar al-Assad to flee the country and marking the end of his long-standing regime. This significant shift follows 13 years of civil war, effectively bringing an end to Assad's iron-fisted rule. In the wake of his ouster, Russia began a significant withdrawal of its military assets from Syria, signaling a shift in its military strategy and commitments in the region. At the same time, the United States has begun scaling back its military presence in Syria, with reports indicating that U.S. forces are retreating from frontline positions, suggesting a possible shift in America's involvement in the ongoing Syrian conflict. Tom Luongo, the creator of the influential newsletter Gold, Goats and Guns, emphasized that the primary objective should be for both the United States and Russia to withdraw from Syria and, by extension, from the entire region. He believes that if this withdrawal occurs, particularly by 2025, and if Donald Trump is allowed to regain power, there is a real possibility that this outcome could be achieved. When President-elect Donald Trump begins his second term next month, he will face a dramatically changed Middle East and pressing questions regarding the future of approximately 2,000 U.S. troops stationed in eastern Syria. For over a decade, these forces have been stationed at various outposts to combat the Islamic State and monitor the activities of Iran, a key regional adversary. Luongo admits that he might be overly optimistic about Trump's potential role in this process. Still, he believes that removing Iran's nuclear ambitions and withdrawing unconditional support for Israel could change the dynamics of the region. As we dive into the video, remember to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. We value your thoughts, so drop a comment below and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content.
I think it's also a little simpler than everyone thinks. The goal that everybody should be hoping for is for the United States and Russia to get the hell out of Syria and to get it the hell out, and by extension, the hell out of the region, right? And allow everybody who's been torn up and set it against each other by typical British perfidy, going all the way back to Sykes-Picot in 1916, that the best way for that to resolve itself is for all the players who are there, whose ancestral lands these are, to have to deal with each other without having the big bodyguard standing behind them. And I think that that's the possibility. There's a distinct possibility of that occurring in 2025 if Trump is allowed to take power. Because I don't think Trump has any desire to watch Netanyahu create greater Israel and move out to the Euphrates River. I don't think Trump wants to pay for Ukraine. I don't think Putin wants to deal with this nonsense with an belligerent Iran on the other side, because a belligerent Iran and a belligerent Israel that cannot stop being belligerent in each other for whatever reason. They're only this way because the United States backs one side and the Russians, by necessity, by secondary mechanism, have to be there in Syria or in Iran, because Iran is the crossroads for the international North-South transport corridor and for Belt and Road and for the entire Eurasian independence project, right? The not Eurasian, but Asian independence project, which is to get Asia out from underneath this McKinderist style global geopolitics that have dominated our lives going back now 3 world wars and before. That has to end. And I see Putin wanting to do that. I see even India to a greater or lesser extent wanting to do it. But the stickler here is the Iranian theocracy, but which is getting backed because of the massive amounts of pressure they're being put on Iran. It's a typical defense mechanism. Like, well, better the devil we know than the devil from overseas. And that's why the theocracy has has survived as long as it has, even though it's not well loved, right? So I don't think the Russians care. They don't care who's in charge in Iran as long as it's someone that they can deal with. So it makes sense that the Russians would, in effect, pull out and allow Erdogan to come in and blunt Israel. And so that's the way I'm seeing Israel at this, Syria at this point, and I'm seeing enough stuff from the Arab press and from the amount of the number of people who have come to visit Damascus with the Turkish foreign minister and Turkish military leaders, that it's pretty clear that Turkey is in charge of the situation in Syria. For how long, I don't know. Whether or not I'm right in my analysis as to whether or not the U.S. is going to allow that to occur, right? I don't know. I'm hoping maybe this is rose-colored glasses on my part for what I think Trump is going to do in the region, but I think that you remove a belligerent Iran pushing towards nuclear weapons, and you take away the unlimited support for Israel in the same way that Europe seems to have unlimited support for Ukraine. And I think the entire dynamic of the region changes in a way that is both chaotic and ultimately can actually resolve itself. And maybe this is the path to minimum bloodshed in the long run, even though it's going to be bloody.
The year began with Russia continuing its 2022 invasion of Ukraine, citing concerns over the expansion of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, towards its borders. This conflict, which had been ongoing for over a year, intensified in early 2024. 3 months prior, in October 2023, the militant group Hamas launched an attack on Gaza, resulting in over 1,000 deaths. This led to a massive retaliatory strike from Israel against Palestine. Tom Luongo argues that there has been a pressing need for ongoing financial support to Ukraine to sustain the debts, loans, and commitments made to keep the country afloat. In his view, the West continues to follow its original strategy, with Trump effectively contained and unable to interfere with their plans. Now let's redirect our attention to a video.
There's a real need for money to flow into Ukraine in order to ensure that the debts and the loans and the this and the, all the money that's been promised and continues to flow in there. It's this basic idea. It's, as always, it's extended pretend. I'm thinking now specifically from the perspective of the British and the Europeans, who are absolutely whole hog all the way in. We're going to support Ukraine forever and a day because they don't have any other options. And again, why are we in Ukraine? Because Britain and the Europeans have no collateral. Why are they playing this game in the Middle East? Because they have no collateral. So the plan was clearly to hold on to political power in Europe and the UK for as long as possible, bleed the Russians white, bleed them out of money, bleed them out of men, bleed them out of materiel and everything else, keep control of the United States from both a monetary and a political perspective in order to keep the money and the material flowing in to keep bleeding the Russians with the intended goal, as they've told us multiple times, to break Russia up into multiple pieces so that they can then start to get control of all the collateral in the Donbass and everything else, and then use those future cash flows to pay back the people who paid for the buildup of Ukraine in the first place. These people owe a lot of money to a lot of very powerful people. Ursula von der Leyen owes money, in effect, or the European Commission owes money. And so they have to keep pulling it out of the people in order to keep the money flowing in, to keep Ukraine alive for as long as possible, in the vain hope that they can bind down Trump, keep him from being able to do anything, and still get their war and win their war. That's what they're trying to do. It's nothing new here. So seeing the $500 million thing, bounty that, or bribe that they tried to offer Robert Fico in Slovakia, no surprise, right? Because at that point, they've got to try and change the facts on the ground in order to continue the process. They still want to stage World War III from Romania, which is why they won't allow a populist government to come to power in Romania. And more importantly, Romania is a really important port on the Black Sea. So they still see themselves as being able to kick the Russians out of Tartus. They've just taken they've added Sweden and Finland to get control of the Baltic Sea. So they're now, okay, Russia, you want Crimea? Well, you're not getting anything else.
The year 2024 was defined by a series of international conflicts that reshaped geopolitical landscapes and threatened global stability. From the ongoing war in Ukraine to rising tensions in the Middle East, the year saw changing alliances and intense military actions. The repercussions of these crises reverberated far beyond their regions, impacting diplomatic relations and altering strategic priorities on a global scale. How do you think the shifting alliances in 2024 will impact global power dynamics in the next decade? Share your feedback in the comments below. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to keep up with our latest updates. We appreciate you being a part of this journey.